I'm excited to share my story. My name is Sarah Mitchell, I'm 38, and I work as a trauma nurse in a bustling emergency room in Los Angeles. I've been happily married to Ethan for a decade, and we have a wonderful 7-year-old daughter named Emma. About 3 months ago, I went through an experience that deeply changed how I perceive life and the nature of good and evil. It was a Friday night when things took a dramatic turn. I was on the night shift, and we were overwhelmed by casualties from a multi-car pileup on the freeway. The energy in the ER was electric, but chaotic as patients were streaming in. I was focused on stabilizing a critical patient when an ambulance arrived with another. In the midst of the hectic environment, I rushed to assist, but I slipped on a pool of blood on the floor. The next thing I remember is falling backward and hitting my head on a sharp corner of a metal cart. That moment is forever etched in my memory, the intense pain and the worried faces of my colleagues right above me. After that, everything went dark. I later learned that I had sustained a severe traumatic brain injury. The impact had caused my brain to swell dangerously, which led to emergency surgery. During the operation, my heart stopped for almost 6 minutes. Imagine that. As they fought to bring me back, I was experiencing something extraordinary. Something that fundamentally altered my beliefs about existence, death, and the spiritual world. Describing what happened next is challenging, but I'll try. I remember feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. It was as though all the chaos and suffering of the ER vanished. I felt weightless, drifting into a realm filled with indescribable beauty and light. There was this brilliant light, beyond anything I could have ever imagined. It was brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt my eyes. Instead, it radiated warmth and love. As I took in this incredible place, I noticed a figure approaching. My heart knew instantly, it was Jesus. I know this might sound unbelievable, but his presence exuded love and wisdom in a way words simply can't encapsulate. Being there, I felt completely understood and enveloped in divine compassion. It was a profound moment, and I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. I arrived earlier than expected, and I was greeted warmly by Jesus. I felt a rush of emotions at his presence, but I found the courage to ask about my departure. He gently reassured me, saying that it wasn't my time to leave just yet. My mission on earth wasn't complete, but what he had to show me would shed light on the profound struggle I was part of. In an instant, everything shifted. One moment we were enveloped in tranquility, and the next, we were amid a breathtaking scene that defied my imagination. Heaven unfolded before me, radiant and more glorious than any moment on earth. Countless angels surrounded us, their light filling the air as they sang in harmonious praise. The music was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It felt as if joy and love took on a life of their own, filling my soul with warmth. Then, Jesus pointed my gaze toward one specific angel. Amidst the multitude, this angel stood out even more. He was dazzling, radiating light in a way that made the others seem dim by comparison. His voice rang out, leading the angels in worship with exquisite beauty. I learned that this was Lucifer as he once was, before the fall. Jesus urged me to witness the birth of evil, setting the stage for something momentous. Lucifer captivated me. Words seemed inadequate to describe his splendor. He appeared adorned in what looked like precious gems, emeralds, rubies, diamonds, each reflecting light in mesmerizing patterns. His wings spread wide, shimmering with every conceivable hue. But beyond his stunning appearance, there was an undeniable charisma that commanded attention. When he sang, it felt as though his voice resonated through the very essence of heaven. Jesus explained Lucifer's esteemed position. He had once been the highest of the angels, the most flawless creation, entrusted as the guardian of God's throne. He led the angelic hosts in worship, embodying perfection, wisdom, and beauty. Knowing all this made his eventual downfall even more perplexing. As I looked on, I bore witness to the painful transformation. It began with subtle shifts, barely noticeable at first. I watched as Lucifer started to admire something outside of himself, his heart beginning to wander away from the light. It was heartbreaking to see such a magnificent being falter. I remember a moment that felt like I was witnessing a fundamental shift, an emergence of something troubling. I stood there in those radiant streets of heaven, and there he was, Lucifer, captivated by his own reflection. It was strange watching him linger, his gaze glued to his image, a smirk creeping onto his face. Even Jesus caught on, pointing out that it was the birth of pride I was witnessing. What happened next was revealing. I saw Lucifer glance at other angels, measuring himself against them. Each comparison chipped away at his previous demeanor. A flicker of pride here, a trace of disdain there. It was as if those feelings were planting roots deep in his heart. He began to convince himself that his dazzling beauty and incredible talents were his own achievements, forgetting that they were actually gifts from God. It was an unsettling scene, almost as if I could hear the thoughts swirling around in his mind, projecting outwards like echoes. He was questioning everything. Why should I bow to anyone? Look at me, I'm the most beautiful, the most talented. Worship should be directed at me. I ought to be God. I could feel the weight of his arrogance, and it was heartbreaking to see. Jesus had warned me about the dangers of pride, how it transforms genuine love for others into a hollow self-love, turning gratefulness into entitlement and service into domination. I couldn't help but notice how it began to shape Lucifer's behavior. He craved the attention of the other angels more than ever. His once humble songs morphed into grand performances, complete with dramatic flourishes. It was no longer about leading worship, it felt like he was putting on a show. Then I saw him quieting his voice, leaning toward other angels in conspiratorial whispers. Jesus told me this was Lucifer planting seeds of doubt, casting shadows on their faith. He insinuated that God was holding something back from them, that they deserved more. Don't you think we should have more power? Aren't we stunning and mighty? Why should we bow to God when we could be gods ourselves? It was astonishing, really. Many angels seemed enchanted by his charisma, their expressions shifting to confusion and doubt. Some instinctively resisted, yet others were magnetically drawn in by his dangerous vision of equality with God. Jesus explained the paradox of free will. It enables genuine love and devotion, but it also opens the door to rebellion. So there he was, Lucifer, actively sowing discord among the angels. And it was truly shocking to witness how effective he was. With every innocent question he posed, he stirred up dissatisfaction. Have you ever pondered why God keeps the tree of knowledge just for himself? Don't we deserve that kind of knowledge too? Why should we lower ourselves to humans? Aren't we far superior? It was a spectacle, watching the foundations of heaven tremble, all sparked by Lucifer's prideful descent. I have this vivid memory of witnessing an extraordinary event that shook the very foundations of heaven. It's hard to explain, but I was taken aback by how strategic Lucifer was in his rebellion. What struck me most was the deep sorrow of God. I could feel it. Jesus revealed to me that our Father was truly heartbroken. His love for Lucifer and all the angels runs deep, yet love comes with a significant caveat: free will. Even in the celestial realm, every being has the choice to embrace God or turn away. In my vision, I saw God repeatedly extending his hand to Lucifer, offering chances for repentance. But each time Lucifer's pride got in the way, and he would refuse. I can't emphasize enough how powerful that image was for me. Then came the moment of Lucifer's fall. That was both horrifying and awe-inspiring. I watched as he rallied about a third of the angels around him, using his words to sway them. Boldly, he stood before God's throne and proclaimed his intent to ascend, to elevate himself above the clouds. The atmosphere shifted drastically the moment he uttered those words. A light that once radiated from him began to fade, and I could see darkness creeping in, tainting his beauty. Before I knew it, a brilliant flash illuminated the scene, and Michael, another archangel, appeared, leading a host of loyal angels. That's when the chaos began. A fierce war erupted in heaven, and it was unlike anything I could have imagined. There were no swords or shields, but the air crackled with energy. I could see streams of light clashing against the advancing darkness. Michael and his loyal angels stood firm, pushing back against Lucifer and his followers. The heartbreaking part? As the battle raged on, I watched helplessly as Lucifer and his rebels transformed. Their divine shapes became twisted and corrupted, their once beautiful light consumed by the encroaching dark. The culmination of the battle was unforgettable. With a final colossal clash, Michael and his faithful angels forced Lucifer and his followers to the very edge of heaven. It was in that moment I'll never forget. I saw Lucifer being cast out, plummeting like a brilliant star descending through the sky. As he fell, the last remnants of his angelic form burned away, and he morphed into a creature of pure darkness, Satan, the adversary. Jesus then explained to me what I had just witnessed, the terrible ejection of the great dragon, that ancient serpent known as the devil, Satan, the deceiver of the world. It was an incredible vision, one filled with profound lessons. I want to share a profound journey I experienced regarding the nature of evil and free will. It's fascinating to think that Satan wasn't originally created as a force of evil. Rather, he chose to reject love in favor of pride. That choice sparked a chain of darkness. One of the key lessons I learned was about the incredible power of free will. Even the most perfect being can make a wrong choice when given the freedom to choose. This emphasizes the importance of faith, humility, and love in our lives. Jesus made it clear that pride is at the core of all sin, capable of corrupting even the most beautiful aspects of creation. After delving into Lucifer's fall, I found myself at what felt like the very edge of heaven. From this vantage point, the earth lay beneath us, but what captivated me was seeing these slender strands of light connecting people to one another and to heaven itself. At that moment, Jesus revealed how the fall of Lucifer had repercussions that reached down to earth. I witnessed darkness spreading out, almost like a wave, with shadowy tendrils attempting to attach to people. It hit me hard when Jesus explained that these were the enemy's influences, temptation, doubt, and fear, all trying to pull us away from God and from one another. But amidst that darkness, there was a beautiful sight. I noticed the same strands of light interconnecting people through love, faith, and prayer. Every act of kindness and each moment spent in worship acted to fortify these connections. That struck me as a crucial insight. I remembered how I had seen the ramifications of Lucifer's rebellion vividly. It was as if that rebellion flung open a gateway to evil in our world. The darkness I observed wasn't always overt. It crept in quietly, like a whispered doubt here or a subtle temptation there. However, I also realized how our choices played a significant role. We have the ability to either amplify or diminish those dark influences in our lives. Jesus made it clear that spiritual warfare isn't just about a grand cosmic struggle. It's about the everyday decisions we make. With every choice, we either align with God's love or succumb to selfishness and pride. It's a sobering perspective, isn't it? I even gleaned some advice on how we can guard ourselves against these dark influences, and you might find it surprisingly simple. The essence lies in nurturing humility and love. Pride was what led to Lucifer's downfall, and it remains his primary weapon against us. By choosing humility and acknowledging our dependence on God, we can forge a path away from that darkness and towards the light. Let me share a revelation that truly transformed my understanding of our connection to one another and to God. It became clear to me that when we choose to love others and engage in acts of kindness, we not only strengthen our bonds, but also shield ourselves from many of the negative influences around us. I saw this vividly. These gestures of love created beautiful strands of light that darkness simply cannot breach. And prayer, oh, it's so much more than just asking for what we want. It's about aligning our desires with God's will and deepening our relationship with Him. That perspective feels so enriching, doesn't it? Reflecting on my experiences, especially concerning the angels who stayed loyal to God, was eye-opening. They were truly inspiring. What struck me was their consistent focus on the divine, in stark contrast to Lucifer and his followers. While Lucifer fell into self-absorption, these angels maintained their gaze on the source of their existence and purpose. Through my vision, I learned that these faithful angels embodied true humility. They understood that all of their beauty, power, and skills were gifts from God, something to be grateful for, not flaunted. So, when Lucifer dangled promises of greater power and wisdom, they simply expressed profound gratitude for what they already had. Their understanding of love was something special too. They found deep joy in serving God and caring for one another, never craving recognition or status. This selfless love acted like armor against Lucifer's temptations that played on pride and selfishness. And yes, the way these loyal angels engaged with us humans was nothing short of amazing. I witnessed glimpses of their roles as messengers and protectors, often working behind the scenes in ways we might never notice. I saw how they infused light into the connections between us and God, as well as among ourselves. It was touching to see their genuine affection for humanity. Despite their superior power and knowledge, they were patient, even taking delight in our small spiritual milestones. Jesus shared with me how these faithful beings truly value our free will. They respect the personal journeys each of us takes, providing guidance without ever forcing us along the way. I also discovered some heartbreaking truths about the broader effects of Lucifer's rebellion. It sent shockwaves throughout all of creation. Darkness appeared to seep into everything. The impact went far beyond humanity. I want to share a journey I went on that completely transformed my understanding of life and creation. You know, when I looked around, I noticed a world filled with decay and death, where once life and growth thrived. I learned from Jesus that when sin entered our existence, everything in creation was impacted. Natural disasters, the predatory nature of animals, and the suffering we encounter, even outside of our actions, are all effects of that original sin. Yet, amidst the heaviness of that truth, I found a glimmer of hope. Jesus revealed to me that creation itself is yearning for redemption. I saw that acts of love and obedience to God have the power to push back against the darkness. This isn't just about affecting our hearts, it can also reflect in the physical world around us, which was a beautiful perspective to embrace. Now let me take you back for a moment to the story of Lucifer. I used to wonder why God would allow such a rebellion. Why not stop it before it started? This question tugged at my heart during my vision. Jesus explained it in a way that made so much sense. Love requires free will. Without the freedom to choose, there can't be genuine love, worship, or meaningful relationships. God's intention was to engage authentically with His creation, not to have a bunch of robots obeying commands. This included giving the same free will to every being, including Lucifer. It dawned on me that the potential for evil comes hand in hand with that freedom. Jesus shared a profound insight. Our Father understood the risks when He granted this gift. He foresaw the pain it might cause, even the heart-wrenching sacrifice of His own Son. However, He also believed that the love fostered through free choice would be incredibly worthwhile. During my vision, I caught a glimpse of God's ultimate plan. It wasn't just about preventing evil, it was much grander than that. God allowed the rebellion with a purpose, to generate a greater good from it. I saw pieces of this plan unfolding throughout history, showing how God aims to change the very nature of creation through this battle against evil. The objective isn't solely to defeat Satan, but to cultivate beings who have confronted evil and made the choice for good. These beings would grasp the true depth of love and willingly embrace it. Through this struggle, we have a chance to develop into something that even angels may not fully grasp. We are becoming partners in creation, co-workers with Christ. This realization was astonishing, inspiring a newfound understanding of our potential and purpose on earth. I now see our lives as a crucible, a transformative space where we're being shaped and guided. Every decision we make and every challenge we encounter presents us with a chance to grow in love and become more like Christ. I began to realize that God doesn't just swoop in to wipe out evil right away. Instead, He's operating on a grander scale. The ultimate goal isn't merely the destruction of evil. It's about crafting beings who have confronted evil, comprehended its hollowness, and willingly chosen love over it. When I reflected on eternal judgment and hell, it was one of the toughest parts of my vision. Jesus illuminated that hell isn't just some fiery place where God sends people. Rather, it's a state of being that comes from choosing to reject love in favor of self-interest. I witnessed how Lucifer's choice to turn away from God led him to a self-imposed exile. The darkness that enveloped him wasn't something unleashed upon him, but the inevitable consequence of distancing himself from the ultimate source of love and light. In this context, what we refer to as hell is actually the eternal situation of those who, like Lucifer, have opted for self over love. It's not a punishment doled out by God, but rather the natural outcome of their own decisions. This idea can be pretty challenging to digest. I was also curious about the potential for redemption for Lucifer and the fallen angels, so I asked Jesus directly. His response was layered. He explained that the offer of redemption is perpetually available. God's love never falters. However, angels have a distinct nature compared to humans. Their choices once made carry an irreversibility that our choices don't necessarily hold. Unlike humans, angels, including Lucifer, made their decisions with full awareness and understanding. They weren't misled or acting out of ignorance. Their rejection of love was total and final. For humans, though, the opportunity for redemption remains alive as long as we draw breath. Jesus illustrated how each human life consists of a chain of choices, either steering us closer to love or pushing us away from it. When we face the final judgment, it really reveals the path we've chosen all along. That's a weighty thought. As for resisting temptation and avoiding Lucifer's fate, I learned something interesting. It's both simple and yet quite challenging. The fundamental key lies in nurturing humility and love. Pride, which led to Lucifer's downfall, continues to be his strongest weapon against us. Through my vision, I came to understand that true humility isn't about belittling ourselves. It's about seeing ourselves accurately. Let me share a journey that really changed my perspective on life. It all began with a profound realization about how interconnected we all are and our deep dependence on God. I learned to appreciate what I have instead of fixating on what I lack. It was a transformative moment, recognizing that love is the remedy for pride. When we shift our focus to loving God and one another, we automatically become less wrapped up in ourselves. There was this incredible moment when I had a glimpse of how small acts of kindness, no matter how trivial they may seem, reinforce our connection to God and push back against the darker influences that can cloud our lives. In that experience, Jesus said something that stuck with me. It's time for you to return. Keep what you've seen close to your heart and share it with others. He urged me to help people understand the spiritual truths and the need to be vigilant against pride. As he placed his hand on my forehead, I was overwhelmed by an indescribable sense of love and peace. Suddenly, I found myself back in my body, gasping for breath amidst the chaos of a surgical team working around me. Ever since that experience, my entire outlook on faith has shifted. I've identified myself as a Christian for a long time, but now my faith feels so much deeper and more genuine. Every choice I make and every thought I entertain ties into a much grander spiritual framework. I'm more conscious of my own struggles with pride. Whenever I catch myself thinking I'm superior to others or feeling entitled, I think about Lucifer's downfall and how even the most perfect angel was corrupted by pride. This has inspired me to actively strengthen those connections of love I experienced. I find myself reaching out more, praying for those around me, and performing acts of kindness. It's like I want to weave those strands of light into our shared reality. Speaking of light and darkness, this experience also opened my eyes to the nature of Satan and his tactics in our world. Witnessing Lucifer's fall provided clarity on how he operates. It's often through subtle deception rather than overt villainy. He can seem appealing or entirely reasonable. I noticed his patience and strategy, how he used to sow seeds of doubt and dissatisfaction in heaven over time. I believe he employs the same methods today, gradually eroding people's beliefs and moral foundations. The most crucial lesson I took away: Satan is a created being, not an equal rival to God. He has limits. While he can tempt and deceive, he can never force anyone to choose sin. We always have the power to decide for ourselves. That realization has been liberating for me. Let me share my journey with you. It all started when I began to understand how Satan operates in our world. You see, when he fell from grace, he became hell-bent on corrupting what God had created. It was like a light bulb moment when I learned that his main tool is deception. He had deceived himself into believing he could be on par with God, and from then on, his mission was to lead humanity into lies. Jesus opened my eyes to the tactics used by Satan and his fallen angels, now known as demons. They have this unsettling knack for twisting the truth, making what is evil appear good and vice versa. They sneak into our hearts with whispers of doubt, stirring up pride and resentment, all in an effort to pull us away from God and from each other. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? I was shown vivid snapshots of history, moments where pride, greed, and the unquenchable thirst for power led to horrific events. Yet amid those dark instances, there emerged sparks of hope. I witnessed acts of love and sacrifice that stood against the prevailing darkness. Jesus reminded me that the epic battle I witnessed in heaven is still waging right here on earth, but not with swords or celestial armies. Instead, it's fought in the hearts and minds of every individual. As I wrestled with these revelations, I found myself pondering the future. Was there any insight into what's to come, particularly regarding the end times? Jesus did share snippets of what might be ahead, but he stressed that these were merely possibilities, not certainties. He explained that the future hinges on humanity's choices in response to God's love. I gleaned that the overarching trajectory of everything is towards reconciliation with God, but the way we get there can vary greatly. It could unfold gently and peacefully, or we might face significant turmoil and suffering, all depending on human decisions. Ultimately, Jesus assured me that while love will prevail, the journey forward will be shaped by the free choices of all of us. Every act of love brings us closer to the day when everything will be renewed. Then came the topic of Christ's return and the final judgment. I saw glimpses of these significant events, but they felt more abstract than concrete. It struck me that Christ's return wasn't just a moment in time. Rather, it seemed like a revelation where the spiritual realm would become clear to everyone. It was as if the true essence of everything would be laid bare. When it came to judgment, it didn't play out like a traditional trial as we often envision. Instead, it felt more like a revealing of one's true self, something shaped by all the choices made throughout a lifetime. Those who nurtured love and connection naturally moved toward God, while those who chose to live for themselves found it intolerable to be in his presence. It was a profound insight, one that left me both hopeful and contemplative about the journey we all share. I had this incredible realization about love recently. Jesus shared with me this idea that judgment isn't something imposed from above. Rather, it's the outcome of our own choices, whether we decide to embrace love or turn away from it. It's quite a thought, isn't it? Reflecting on my journey, the biggest takeaway for me has been the unbelievable power of true love. I'm talking about that selfless, humble kind of love. It's really the most powerful force in the universe. Love is what keeps everything in place. It's what gives our lives real meaning. When I think about Lucifer, it strikes me that his downfall came from rejecting love in favor of himself. In contrast, we can elevate our spirits by choosing love over selfishness. Every little decision we make carries weight. We are part of this vast cosmic play that's bigger than we can grasp, and it reminds me that we don't need to perform grand acts to be significant. It's all about those small, everyday choices, showing kindness, choosing to be humble instead of prideful. Those are the moments when we truly align ourselves with what God hopes for us. And even when life appears bleak, I've learned that love will always find a way to triumph, not by force, but by the free will of those who recognize how invaluable love is. We all have a chance to contribute to this victory, to weave bits of light into a grand tapestry of existence. How amazing is that?